Hello, hello, Edson Oliveira here. This is another interview with the DNN Summit 2017 speakers. This is the 7th interview. We have today Brian Dukes, Anthony Overkamp, David Poindexter, and Matt Kremer. Matt, I'm going to start with you because I wanted to, first of all, give you a warm welcome to the DNN community, and I hope that Mr. Poindexter has been treating you well. So welcome, Matt.
Hey, David's been great to me, and I appreciate you guys having me here today. I think we're going to have a lot of fun talking about all this stuff and all our different talks.
Perfect. Very good, very good. So Matt, how about you introduce yourself, talk a little bit about what you do with Ionic.
Cool. So yeah, I'm Matt Kremer. I work for the Ionic company, so I'm one of the official members there. For those of you who don't know, Ionic is an open source mobile app framework using HTML, CSS, JavaScript. I personally am on our Creator team. Creator is our drag and drop app building product, and that's kind of what part of our talk is going to be about at DNN Summit. So I lead up that project. My day-to-day, I give David a lot of crap on Slack and ask him to give me all of his feedback so we can make our tool as good as we can to help you guys build apps quickly and easily.
Perfect. David, let's go to you. Introduce yourself, and this time around, talk a little bit about the session that you will be sharing with Matt.
Yeah, so my name is David Poindexter, and I am CEO of Envisionative. We're located in Mooresville, North Carolina, and we're a creative marketing agency and digital media. We focus a lot on mobile app development and DNN development as well, and have recently been using Ionic and Ionic Creator in specific to build mobile apps. And that is the very topic of our conversation session in DNN Summit in January. And we'll be talking about how to build mobile apps with Ionic Creator and hooking them up to DNN and trying to lower that entry barrier for developers that aren't necessarily so deep divers, in it. Really give them some great tools to do things that they only dreamed of to that point.
Very good, very good. Brian, let's jump to you. Give an introduction about yourself and also talk about the 2 sessions that you're going to be presenting during the summit, please.
Sure. I'm Brian Dukes. I'm the CTO of Engage Software here in St. Louis. And I'm gonna be giving 2 sessions at DNN Summit. The first is Git tips and tricks, I guess maybe concepts, tips and tricks. So it's kind of how to think about source control. It's how to kind of view Git as a tool in your workflow and how to kind of make the most use of it rather than having it be like an afterthought, introducing it into your workflow in a way where it can really change how you work and give you a lot more benefits. And then my second talk is about building a client-side pipeline. So talking about ways that we can be processing our JavaScript and CSS and other client-side assets in a automated manner to enhance our development experience, as well as kind of enhancing the product that we give to end users when we produce a final package.
Perfect. Okay. So we also have Anthony. Anthony is also from Engage. So Anthony, introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your session as well.
Sure. I'm Anthony Overkamp. I'm creative director at Engage. My session will be UX for beginners. We're really just going to kind of jump into kind of a step-by-step process on how to begin to work around improving your UX for features or things that you want to do across your site. So I'm looking forward to doing something a little different this year and kind of helping out in a spot where I think a lot of clients and a lot of people kind of struggle to get started with how to approach UX.
Got it. Perfect. Okay. Matt, let me go back to you. First, let's be honest here. First time that David comes to you, a guy working on this DNN thing, a Microsoft stack, I mean, you must have thought, Microsoft stack? I mean, be honest, how was that?
No, I mean, I don't think that we've, Ionic and myself in general feel that way about any kind of stack. Our primary goal overall is to just make mobile app development easy for basically whoever we can. Like if you have HTML, CSS, JavaScript knowledge, we are enabling you to build mobile apps. And that knowledge base, I think, exists over all kinds of developers, over, DNN, Microsoft, the whole shebang. While I might not have Microsoft or DNN specific experience, I can definitely see the value that it brings to most any developer community that exists out there. And, honestly, when David and I first got started in chatting, he had sent me like a picture of the app that he was making using Ionic Creator. And it really was one of the best looking apps that anyone had shared with me from our tool. And it kind of enabled me to see, just to the point of like, wow, like people are using this tool to build really good looking things from communities that maybe I hadn't even heard about or, knew a lot about lately. So honestly, it was kind of really cool to see David come to me and show me what he was building with that.
David, make sure that you send that check to Matt, okay?
It's already in the mail.
Okay, by the way, before I carry on with more questions, again, I have a bunch of questions for everybody, but I want to make sure that you guys also, this is an open discussion as well. So if you feel that, hey, I wanted to ask a question to Matt or to Brian or to David, if you have any question about what's been discussed here, please say, Ederson, stop. I have to ask something here, okay? So I'll leave it open to anyone that wants to ask as well. And by the way, Matt and David, I will be asking some questions. If David, if you think Matt will be better positioned to answer that, just flip the question, okay? But I'm gonna go with you now, David. Okay, so I saw the description of the session. I love JavaScript, I love HTML, I love CSS. Am I ready for Ionic?
Absolutely. And I should say abso-freaking-lutely, because, it's like, Anthony, you could probably appreciate this. You've probably dealt with putting together prototypes, or screen flows or things like that. And you may be using wireframes to do that, maybe Balsamic or something like that, to put things together. And one thing that I have found really helpful with Ionic Creator is because it's drag and drop, I can now create my prototypes or my screen, initial screen flow type stuff right in Creator. So it really it's not just a tool for tech geek people. It's a tool for people building out their ideas and their concepts and rapid prototyping. So, if you're a UX guy or you're a designer or you're a creative director or whatever, and you need to just put together some quick concepts, you don't have to dig into the code. So absolutely, yeah, you're ready. You don't even really need to know any HTML or CSS to do that part of it. Just have, it's basically a library of components that you can drag and drop and put your screens together, and it actually handles hooking up those and wiring those together so that you can actually navigate your app. So it's kind of like using, something like an Insight or something like that. You're kind of working to hook all these things up. It really does a lot of that. So yeah, absolutely, you're ready. So it's not just for people serious, ready to develop yet.
Okay.
And I think I'd like to mention something on the flip side of that too, which is while it is drag and drop and it's super easy and you have to have like almost no experience to get started, we also cater to the flip side. I know a lot of drag and drop tools kind of over the past years have gotten a bad rap of not being good, or the code output is horrible or things like that. And we really pride ourselves in it's a drag and drop tool, but we give you a lot of power. So we actually fully open up all of your, the controller JavaScript code behind every page in your app. We let you edit that. We have an HTML component where you can just put in your own kind of components with full control over everything. So we really try to give you that power while also making it extremely easy to use. So we're across the whole gamut. Like if you're just a designer, feel free to jump in and then you get real code in the end and bring in a coder then to finish it. But if you're a coder, this is also a really easy way to start, complete, and finish, your mobile app completely in a browser. And I think that's important to note that you don't even need a local mobile app development environment to use Creator. We can actually compile the APK or IPA files natively for your phone for you. So, long story short, we kind of run the whole gamut. It's not just a drag and drop tool.
Got it. Perfect. Okay, so let's rotate a little bit here. So, Brian, let me talk to you a little bit. So, when I saw the first session there, the one that creating a build pipeline for your JS, CSS, and more, I read the description, and in one sentence, you were able to introduce to me. And again, you may not realize, but English is my second language. I mean, you couldn't see that, you couldn't hear that, but it is. So in one single sentence, you introduced me to 2 new words in English. So let me read that. So using tools to transpile, never heard of that. Minify, of course, I know what minify is. But again, you're gonna explain again. And lint, I heard lint in a different context, but again, lint your client-side assets before you ship to them to your website. So tell me what is transpile, minify, and lint, please.
Sure. Those are all kind of developer terms of, I have some amount of source code, and I want to process it through a few different steps so that I can produce a great output. And so transpiling is, it's like compiling, but it's from one language to another human readable language, to another programming language. So for example, if you're writing your styles, instead of writing it directly in CSS, you're writing your styles in less or Sass or stylus. You then transpile that code into CSS in order for the browser to be able to read it. And then once you have that CSS, it's going to be a big file, with spaces and with potentially, names that are longer than you need them to be. And so minification is going to be taking out all of the unnecessary parts of that file so that it's optimized for delivery to a browser. So this is going to take it from something that you can read as a human to something that you definitely don't want to read. It's probably going to end up your 500-line file is going to end up on 1 or 2 lines of code once you've stripped out all of the white space and stuff. And then linting is this idea of running your code through a series of rules and checks. This started with, or at least was popularized by a tool called JSLint from Douglas Crockford. And so basically he's saying, give me your JavaScript and I will tell you what's wrong with it. There are a number of different tools, both on the JavaScript side that are kind of more configurable for what different rules you want to set up for what in your environment makes up good JavaScript. And then you can also do that for your styles to say, I want to impose these particular rules. And that can be as simple as I want to make sure I don't have any invalid color hex codes, to I want to be warned if a property that I'm using isn't fully supported in IE 11 or something like that.
Got it. Okay, that's good. So one more question to you. If right now we stop by to your station, to your computer there, and have a look at your environment and what you're using, to do that, and without being going with too many details, but what would we find right now in terms of your front end as a developer? In terms of tools and scripts and things that you run against your code, what would you find right now today on your station?
So as a developer, kind of my day-to-day experience using these tools is from the command line. And if the command line is scary for people, one, I think we're moving a lot back to the command line as a developer community, so it would be good to get comfortable with it. But even so, there are tools in Visual Studio that will run some of this stuff for you automatically without having to get into the command line directly. But so I'm at the command line, I type one command, and that's kind of, I've set it up in a way where it's generalized across all of my projects. So any site, say if I pull a clean version from a Git repository, I can type npm install, and that'll get all of my all of the dependencies of these tools that I'm using, and then I can type npm start, and it sets up this pipeline, and then I can just work, and everything is working. And so we have it set up in such a way that we're going through npm, which is this tool that comes with Node.js to run these JavaScript tools. But in terms of what npm is actually running can differ from project to project. And so as a developer, I don't have to think about that unless I'm working in my pipeline. But when I do use that pipeline, typically right now I'm using gulp, and using gulp, I lint with ESLint, I minify with Uglify.js and CSS Nano, and but I can switch those tools out really easily if I need to.
Got it. Okay. Anthony, I haven't forgotten about you. So let's talk a little bit now. Okay, so UX for beginners, step-by-step process. Let me tell you, whenever someone mentions UX to me, I think about two things. One extreme is it's black magic, and people has to be born with knowing that. I mean, you have to be born knowing those things. The other side of me, which is that extreme, is, it's just a laundry list of do's and don'ts. So tell me what is in between. Tell me a little bit about that. What do you see, going on here?
Sure. Yeah, user experience is kind of a broad gambit of things. So a lot of people will think, oh, it's something to do with my design, which is true. But it's also something to do with your brand. It's something to do with the goals and missions that you're trying to put your users through, things that you're trying to make sure that they can accomplish easily. It's about users finding enjoyment in what they're doing and being able to efficiently work against a site or against a specific task. Sometimes it has a lot to do with even just your information architecture or even your content hierarchy, the way it's laying out on a page. I tend to kind of bend towards the design side since, I was a designer first. So a lot of my UX thought goes around accessibility, readability, how quickly can I find what I need to find and do on this page or in this site. So I focus a lot there. But, even past that, it's looking for balances. It's looking for just things that make everything feel intuitive, feel easy. I don't want any resistance. So.
Got it.
I hope that answered that question.
No, it does help. But I have a follow-up question on that.
Sure.
In general, and again, I'm asking you to be very generic here, and I guess not too specific, of course. So, what is one low-hanging fruit that you see people, in terms of mistakes that people, they do on UI from a UI perspective? What is one low-hanging fruit that people could easily fix that, and you see that problem again and again and again on different projects, on different sites, on different, on different situations that you come across? What is one low-hanging fruit that people could fix easily?
Yeah, I think something that's still happening today, which is a little surprising, is having to click a lot of times to get somewhere or to do something. Having to, dig through a navigation or click through multiple levels of accordions or something like that to find an answer. And I think, technology-wise and from a user interface standpoint, we're way past that. We should be able to get to that information a lot quicker and with less effort. especially when we're thinking about now the users are touching devices. They're using their phone to start a process. They're maybe finishing at home on their desktop or on the tablet. You know, they're doing things in their car. They're doing things at the bus stop. They're doing things on their couch. Not everything's happening at a desk, at a computer the same way. So trying to really think about easing that use, making things a lot simpler and faster for users to find. So I think trying not to bury things, trying to make things obvious and easy to hit and do is probably the #1 thing that we end up starting with a lot of clients. The other thing that I think is still out there is probably contrast and visibility. Things like buttons can always be a little bit bigger, a little bit higher contrast, a little bit easier to see. That's still something that I think a lot of designers and just marketers aren't fully aware of, that those small changes can make a big difference in the users actually engaging with the stuff.
Got it. Okay. David, I'm gonna jump to you. Why Ionic?
Well, I think that answer is pretty simple in the sense that a lot of the mobile app development tools or frameworks out there right now require a heavier skill set than Ionic does. In particular, Ionic Creator, because it is a drag and drop, you don't even really have to know a whole lot about the framework that's underlying. So I think it's because it's a low barrier of entry for mobile app development.
Perfect. Matt, Ionic is an open source project platform, but for a company to exist, there must be a business model behind that. So can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, what is the open source part, and what is the company itself?
Yeah, for sure. So the framework, like the SDK that you're using to make your actual mobile app, is and always will remain free. Like that's the part where, if you want to work locally, download our CLI tools and start just, building out with our buttons, our tabs, side menus, all that, putting that into your project, that's always free. And you don't have to worry about that at all. It's MIT licensed. We have contributors from all over the world. Like it's a maintained project. It's always going to exist, and it's a huge priority for our company. We also have, like you said, a few commercial products. So Creator does have a free version. We also have a paid plan that unlocks a ton of additional features. And, so that's the drag and drop tool. And then we also have backend services that you can use for your apps. So if you need authentication, we just started a beta for a database service. If you need push notifications, if you want us, actually this part's free, but if you want us to compile your app for you, if you want to use our deploy service, which actually allows you to bypass resubmission to the App Store and instead just push HTML, CSS, and JavaScript straight to the app on people's phones whenever you do an update. Since they're considered assets, you can actually do that. So we offer all of these other services that you can use to also power your app, as well as the framework, which is free to let you make your app.
Got it. Okay. Again, this is in a way very comparable to, in a way, only comparable to what we have on our DNN ecosystem. We have an open source product, and then we have a paid version as well. David, if I ask you, how far were you able to push the let's call it the free version or the free offering? How far were you able to push that before you know what? Now I have to flip and I have to start engaging Ionic with the paid options and features of Ionic.
Yeah, for me, it was a fairly short-lived time on the free side of things. There's definitely enough there to see what the capabilities are and to understand what's possible there. So as soon as it clicked in my head that, this is a tool that I can use to make money, it was a no-brainer for me to go ahead and flip the switch into the paid version because I'd already seen technically what I needed to see. So, I guess to answer your question, the free aspect of it is really full blown. It's just how much you can do is from a project number standpoint, that type of thing. And Matt could probably answer that a little bit better. But for me, it was a very quick decision-making process to get to, and also the cost is such a low entry point for that next paid, that first paid level, that it really became a no-brainer for us.
Perfect.
Yes, so I think there are two different sides of the coin here. So like everything David just said is completely and 100% true for Creator, the drag and drop tool. Creator is built kind of, if you want to say, to be like a product. So we have our free tier where you can go do all the drag and drop and get a lot of that stuff done. And then if you wanted to export and work locally, you could remain free for as long as you want. If you want to do your coding and stuff in Creator, that's part of the paid plan. However, that's different than Ionic, the framework. Like if you were just interested in working with the framework, you can work free forever, and there's like not an upgrade path for framework. So like you have full access, you can work locally. So I think it's important to note that like, I think some companies out there like have an immediate upgrade path for like the whole system. Like we're going to give you, a little bit for free. And then, if you're using Ionic, we make you pay like within a week. And that's really not how Ionic works. Ionic works where if you want to work free forever, you totally can. If you want these additional services or products like Creator or our services, that's when we start to say, okay, there's still free tiers, but you might want to upgrade to get additional features. But the framework experience is and always will remain a free piece that you could use forever.
Perfect. That addressed that quite well. Rotating again here, Brian. Let's talk a little bit about the other session here this time around. The session about Git. First question is it a basic introductory session, or is it a session geared towards people that are already using Git and they want to go and become more power users of Git?
I think it's going to address both of those. I'm not going to go over kind of the very basics of what Git is and kind of basic commands. I want to introduce what I would consider like foundational concepts, or maybe fundamentals of what it is to use Git, and not from a if you've been using it for 5 years, you're not going to get anything out of that. But like with anything, and kind of getting the fundamentals down is really important to being proficient at a skill. And so I think a lot of us have jumped into Git because GitHub blew up and is so popular and everything's on GitHub, but we don't really know the concepts underneath these tools that we've adopted. And so it's kind of taking a step back and saying, how is Git designed to work, and how does it best fit within my workflow? And on top of that, there will be kind of just the tips and tricks of like, even if you've been doing it for forever, that hey, there's this little feature that you probably haven't run into that you could turn on. But I think everybody is really going to get some good direction on how to better use Git in their day-to-day.
Got it. I have to admit, I'm not a user myself of Git. I use a bit of a shame. I use Bitbucket, so my thing is Bitbucket. In any case, just a side note. No need to comment on that. Okay, I prefer not to comment on that. Now, another question for you, Brian, and we lost. Okay, back. Hey, Matt, got back. Okay, so
I don't know what happened. Sorry.
No worries, no worries. Brian, and again, although this session is not supposed to be introduction, but from your point of view, trying to have a beginner's mind for a second, which is very hard when we are a power user of a tool, a technology, a platform, but just try that for a second to have a beginner's mind. What would you say is the number one challenge for a company or individual to adopt Git on their development workflow?
I mean, certainly, just source control should be a fundamental tool of how you work, and so hopefully that's the case. And that means switching out source control is going to be a big deal. I think kind of the way that you get around that is you contribute to open source, and you get used to working in Git, in all of these different open source libraries, and then when you start your next project, it's pretty easy to say, instead of putting it in this source control server that we used to put it in, I've worked on a couple of little things in Git before. I can try to put this one in Git, and the options for where and how to do that are growing and make that pretty easy. So, for example, Bitbucket has unlimited Git repositories that are private that you can use. So, if you don't want to share your source code, but you do want to host it, you can create a new repo on Bitbucket and work there. If you're using TFS, since 2013, it has had Git repository support. So when you create a new project, you can say, instead of using the TFS version control, I want to use Git for this project, and start doing that. There's an open source project called GitLab that you can host yourself, or if it's going to be open source, you can just put it on GitHub. And so it's changing is a big deal, but it's also pretty easy to get started doing an incremental switch once you start getting comfortable.
Got it. This is more of a curiosity here. You have a lot of projects on the Forge. A lot of JavaScript libraries there. I just went by there. I saw at least 5 or 6 that you have updated in the last 4 days, 3 days. So my question to you is, again, more out of curiosity than anything else. Are those things that you are doing on your daily work, and then it just happens that, hey, let me post this here to the Forge, to GitHub, or are those side things that you do, and you really take the time out of your regular schedule to do those? I mean, just tell me a little bit about that. I'm just curious.
Engage definitely supports doing open source work as part of what we do day to day, and kind of, if we're working on something that makes sense to open source, then we can work on that. And specifically with the JavaScript libraries, like the greatest benefit of using the JavaScript libraries happens when everyone in the community is using them. So it definitely, it doesn't even make sense to do it for an internal project and not share it. And I have that. This is basically just packaging up existing libraries that someone else has written. And so I have some automation that lets me do that, do 3/4 of that. And so kind of anytime a project pushes a new update, I can just run a command and get new updates and push them to the Forge. And
got it.
It's not, the fact that they're individual libraries makes it look like I'm doing a lot more than I really am.
Okay. But that does minimize what goes on there.
They're modest, right?
Anthony, you. Okay, so I can only imagine that you must have come across many times of you trying to push the UI, the UX experience in one direction, and clients this time around coming to you and say, hey, but I really wanted to do this or that. I mean, this is one of those situations where the client thinks that they know more than you know. They tell you how to do your job. My question to you is, how do you handle a scenario like that? Do you fight to death, or do you just give up and say, okay, whatever, I mean, do whatever you want? Tell me.
Well, I definitely never give up. Fight to death is a little extreme. I mean, I'm very passionate about getting the message across and hopefully educating our clients as we go. I think that's a big part of our process at Engage, is making sure that clients know that we're on their side. We approach them as a partner, not necessarily just a vendor to do some work. So a lot of times we'll lay out all the options, give pros and cons of each. If a client really wants to push for a certain thing, some battles have to be lost. But when it comes down to better user experience or accessibility or things of that nature, we'll push really hard, providing information, providing background information to really kind of push that decision through. I don't think we've ever really come up against a spot where we haven't been able to get them to make a better decision. Sometimes it's not the best, but we can incrementally improve. And I think that compromise can help. And then there's always, the caveat of, we can come back and change this. We can go ahead and push this and test this for a couple months and then come back and reevaluate and redecide. So, I think a lot of times when you're working on a project, you get zeroed in on, I've got to make everything perfect. I got to get this ready for release. And we forget that web is ever changing. Our content's ever changing. These are things that should always be revisited every couple months anyways. So kind of reminding them that it's not permanent. It doesn't have to be perfect now, helps be a little more understanding, a little more open to changing and growing in the future.
Perfect. Very good. So, Anthony, if I ask you, what is the one thing that you want people to come out of your session knowing about? I mean, pick one thing and one thing only.
I guess the major thing is that it's not as hard as you might think it is. There's a lot of upfront work and a lot of preparing, but most of it is just observation, asking questions, and thinking about what you're trying to solve. So I think to really summarize that, probably the best is, start small, but get started. It's not that hard. You can.
Perfect. Very good. Very good. Okay, Matt, I'm going to go with the same question for you. What is the one thing that you want people to leave your session with David knowing about Ionic? Tell me one thing. I know it can be many, but the one thing.
I think the biggest takeaway is that with Ionic, pretty much anyone can start making a mobile app, especially with Creator. So you don't have to feel like it's a big undertaking or like you need all this local crazy stuff set up. Like if you want to get started with a mobile app, Ionic and especially Creator give you a great way to get started today and not really, put it off or have to have a whole ton of information just to get started. You could have an app up and running that you made within a day if you wanted to.
Perfect. Very good, very good. David, same goes to you. What is the one thing that you are trying to accomplish with this session? Bringing Ionic in context to DNN,
Yeah, I think for me, it's what Matt said, but also knowing that it's not hard to connect that to data and content that is residing in your DNN instance. Be that a custom module or a third-party module, you can get to that data and represent that in the mobile app very easily.
Perfect. Brian, I'm going to ask that twice for you for each one of your sessions. I'll start with the one for JS and CSS. What is the one thing you want people to come out knowing from that session?
Yeah, certainly I want people to be thinking that this is worthwhile, that this is worth investigating, this is worth taking the next step to think about how can I get this better experience in my workflow.
And the Git one?
Yeah, the Git one's a little bit tougher. I don't know that I have a single, I want you to come away with this. It's more of, maybe I just want you to come away feeling more comfortable, more of, I know what Git is going to give me.
Perfect. I can live with that. So just want to finish with the last round here. Just asking each one of you if there's anything else that you guys want to add to that was not discussed yet, anything important that we have missed here, or if you have questions to each other, I mean, feel free. But let me start with Anthony. Anthony, anything else that you like to say before we depart?
No, I think we pretty much covered it. I mean, I'm really excited to do this session, and I'm hoping a lot of people are interested in learning about UX and kind of getting out of that stuck place. I'm hoping that might be a problem solver for some people and make it a little more approachable.
Very good, very good. Matt, the same thing for you. Anything left? Anything that we haven't discussed? I guess that you have a lot to talk about Ionic, but anything else in this context here?
I think one of the biggest things is probably just you don't have to even wait to the talk to go and get started and start looking at some of this stuff. So if you want to go check out Creator, you can go to usecreator.com and just play with things ahead of time if you want. And that's also going to let you come with questions if you have questions that you want to ask, a team member, and David, someone who's been using the tool very effectively for a while. Come armed with questions if you want.
David, your turn.
Yeah, I would say we're going to have a great time. You do not have to be a tech geek head, but if you are, we welcome you as well. So, you may be a manager that's looking for is this a viable solution for us to start building mobile apps and connecting them with our DNN websites? It's for you as well. So we'll try to broaden the conversation as much as possible and make it as high level, but we'll also do some deep dive stuff depending on the audience there. So welcome everybody. We're going to have a good time.
Perfect. And Brian, anything else before we wrap up here?
Yeah. On the build pipelines talk, I kind of mentioned how we use NPM and Gulp as part of our process, but I also just wanted to mention that the talk is really going to be an overview of the options available to you. So I'm also working through learning some of the details of Webpack 2, which is done but not yet released, so that everybody can also get up to speed on some of these other tools. And then also just I'm really looking forward to the Codeathon and hope that folks are able to come early and be able to participate in that, and think that we'll all have a lot of fun working on DNN together.
Perfect. Very good. Very good. So that's really about it. Thank you very much, each one of you, Brian, Anthony, Matt, David, and that's it. We'll see each other on January on Denver. That's it. Thank you very much. Bye.